Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you an OP Great Katana build for an Elden Ring. So the Great Katana is a pretty great weapon. It's got huge reach and a lot of damage, and we can do a lot of different things with this build. So I'll be going over the full stats that we're going to be using for this, and a few different ways we can play around with this. So we need to have 14 strength and 18 dexterity. Now, as for the level, I went with 150 here, so if you're higher, you can put more stats into your dexterity and into like endurance and vigor, and also into your faith and arcane to get a few more incantations, which I'll talk about. So I got 50 vigor, 24 mind, 40 endurance, 14 strength, 60 dexterity, 10 intelligence, 15 faith, and 16 arcane. If you got more levels, get your dexterity up to 80. That's going to increase the scaling on this weapon. And then you can put your faith up to 25 to get yourself Golden Vow, which is a really nice incantation to boost your overall damage and resistance. And then you can put a few more into mind and endurance, use some more incantations. We want to be able to get our poise up to at least 56 or 51, at the very minimum 51. So make sure that you got gear that you can equip that gives you a medium load and that amount of poise. So I went the Weight Mask and the Lord of Blood's Exaltation because this will give us increased bleed damage, which is actually pretty huge on this. Or extra damage after bleed. And then I just went with the these pieces of armor here. I also went with the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, the Shard of Alexander, and the Great Jar's Arsenal. I also have the Raw Meat Dumplings equipped because your Mimic will heal with these and they don't get poisoned. And then we can also use greases on this weapon. And if you're in the DLC, you probably have a ton of greases you've never used, and they're also extremely easy to craft. So freezing grease, blood grease, and rot grease are my three favorites on this weapon, and I was using a Dragon Communion Seal. Now, the way we typically want to approach our combat, so I have this here. So we got Flame Grant Me Strength, Blood Flame Blade, and Swarm of Flies. This is our big three. So we want to use Blood Flame Blade. This will give us extra damage on our weapon. And then Flame Grant Me Strength will increase our damage and the fire damage from this. And then we're going to start with Swarm of Flies. So this is going to trigger the Lord of Blood's Exaltation. Do 2 castings of it, and then you're going to trigger Bleed, and then that's where we get a ton of damage from. So then you can now pretty much just one-shot all minor enemies like that. So it deals a ton of extra damage on them. And you can two-hand this sword to get some extra, get extra reach, and then also a bit of a different attack there. So as you can saw there, we broke his posture with one attack. So it's pretty crazy. That's the nice thing about this, is it's got a good posture break. Oh. And boom, we'll do it again. So that's the beautiful part about this weapon, is the amount of posture damage you can deal with it. And we also got the ability to do some cool things for range. So the nice part about Swarm of Flies is that's our opener. And then we go in with extra damage. So I am also using the Double Slash Ash of War, because Double Slash can do a ton of damage. So we did, with the Shard of Alexander, the first hit did almost 1,000 damage. And we can cast this multiple times in a row. So I'll show you what that looks like here with multiple attacks there. And it's basically what the Rivers of Blood does for attacks, but it does them a lot quicker. Or it does them a little slower, but heavier hitting. So we also have Rotten Breath as an incantation that's going to increase the damage that we deal, but the Flame Grant Me Strength, Blood Flame Blade, and Swarm of Flies is kind of our big three there. And then you can also apply things like Freezing Grease, which is just going to further increase our damage, because we can trigger both Frostbite and the Blood Loss at the same time. On a boss, that can shred them down. So we typically want to start with the Swarm of Flies, because that extra bleed is going to give us a ton of extra damage, and it can really make a difference when we're fighting against a boss or against a group of enemies. So it has a pretty good dash attack too, which is nice. So it has a good range to it, and it's kind of like a stabbing attack. But overall, this weapon is incredible. We can do a few different things with this too. Like, we could equip, there's 2 other great katanas. There's the Dragon Wound one, which will apply, it's interesting. The Dragon one is like Moon Veil, but it does extra damage to dragons. And we could also go with something like the Rakshas's Great Sword, or Great Katana. So those are really nice. The Dragon Hunter one does require a bit more strength, but with both of these equipped, what we can do is we can go in and we can go ahead with jump attacks. So that will pretty much one-shot most enemies because you're doing 16 damage. But even just the L1 attack is really fast. So I really like the double katana setup with the great katanas, because it can do a ton of damage. And we're not even optimizing with our incantations at this point. So if we were to apply our Blood Flame Blade, also you could go with the Bleed Grease. Start with Swarm of Flies, and then Flame Grammy Strength. Flame Grammy Strength doesn't last that long, so it's actually sometimes best to go with it afterwards. And then we can go ahead with our attacks like that and deal a ton of damage. So this weapon in particular pairs well with a lot of other weapons, but typically I would recommend going with, oh, yeah, of course. Sometimes you get stuck in those attacks and it just drains your entire health bar. But the nice thing about the Great Katana is you can put Frostbite on it, you can put Bleed on it, you can put Scarlet Rot on it, and you can also equip those greases and your Mimic will use them. So I like to have the Scarlet Rot one because that just chips down the boss's health over time, and that's really nice. But as you can see, the L1 attacks on this are incredible. There's also another skill that I like to use on this, so I'll show you another weapon art that you can put on it that works very well. I am a big fan of Double Slash though, because it does set up damage really quickly, and you can apply conditions very fast that way as well. But I also like, from the DLC, Flame Spear. And we don't have to go with the flame art style, but a keen one is kind of the way I go with. But as you can see, we actually get some good damage off of a flame art build, so that could be another option if you want to go with that. And then with this weapon, I guess we'll two-hand the katana, and without any extra boost, it's doing about 500 damage there. And then we'll apply our we'll go with our Flame Grammy Strength to give ourselves extra damage, and also increase the fire damage, and then we'll trigger our Bleed with this. You can also attach a Yuji Katana with Seppuku, because that's going to help trigger Bleed as well. And I'll miss with that attack. The nice part about the Flame Spear is it's going to coat your weapon with fire afterwards, but the weapon art has a huge reach to it, because it has a projectile that comes off of it too. So this works really well with Flame Grammy Strength. From a distance, 691 damage is great, and you can cast this multiple times in a row, and if you hit the target with it, it does a bit more damage, so that's another nice benefit to it. But overall, this weapon is really, really effective. So Great Katanas in Elden Ring are awesome. I'm so glad that they added this as a weapon type, but this is the alpha omega of them all. The Great Katana itself, very powerful, and can make for some really fun builds in Elden Ring. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video useful, please hit the subscribe button below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.